Welcome, all you adventurous readers, to the epic worlds of Alfred Doblin, where we explore the life and works of this fascinating but little-known early 20th century writer, brought to you by the website beyondalexanderplatz.com.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode 6 of our season 2. And I'm Chris Godwin. I'm here with Katie Kavanagh.
Hi, everyone. We have a great episode for you today. I'm very excited. This is, do you want to tell us what it's all about, Chris?
Well, we're calling it Secret Life.
Secret Life.
Which sounds like a kind of tabloid newspaper come on, isn't it?
It does.
But,
Oh no.
Yeah, we're going to be dealing with what's for decades been one of the most contentious issues in Dublin scholarly circles, the lit crit industry. And
it's going to be controversial at times, but we shouldn't shy away from it. And everything we're saying today is in the public domain already.
Yes, all we're doing is summarising, secrets which have been revealed since at least 1966.
So we're going to put a bit of context.
That's 60 years this has been out and about.
Okay.
In one form or another. So I mean, what is the secret? So the secret is the relationship of Alfred Doblin with a much younger woman called Yolla Niclas, which lasted from their first meeting in February of 1922, really until Doblin's death. And even thereafter, because Yolla wrote a memoir during the late 60s, early 70s, just to make sure that her side of the story would become known at some point.
Yes.
So I thought what we'd do, we'd first of all follow the kind of the posthumous controversy and the way that the secret leaked out gradually. And the way that it was handled by the lit crit industry, we can call it.
Mm-hmm.
And then we'd go back and look at the relationship from what evidence we have from Alfred himself and from Yolla. So,
okay, great. It's obviously a very private matter in terms of the family. Yes. Where did it posthumously? What happened?
Posthumously,
how did it come to light?
Is that during the 1930s, when Doblin was living in France,
and also, sorry, Chris. Also, why are we even bothering to talk about it?
We're bothering to talk about it because I think there is a very strong case from the point of view of analysing and enjoying Doblin's literary productions. There's a very strong case for saying that the relationship with Yolla released creative powers in him, which were being suppressed because of his rather unhappy marriage with Erna. But then there's also by looking at the psychology of the writer, this can throw light on the way that characters and events in his fictions are sort of put together.
Yep.
Yeah. So okay. I think it's for a rounded picture of Doblin, it's very important. And Doblin himself, a couple of years before he died, called in his old friend from the Paris days called Robert Minder, who we've mentioned a few times in these podcasts.
Yeah.
And who was a very acute critic of Doblin's productions. He called in. Doblin was very sick at this time. He was bedridden, in fact. He called Robert Minder in explicitly to tell him about this relationship and what it had meant for him, because he said, if my side of the story doesn't come out, then posterity is only going to have a very sanitized and prettified version of my life, of Alfred's life. And he wanted a full accounting of the life to become part of the public record after he
And
died.
how do we know this?
We know this because Robert Minder has told us. And how dependable is Robert Minder? Well, he began to mention these confessions, if you like, from 1966. There was an essay he wrote called Alfred Doblin Between East and West, which was included in a collection of Minder's essays and lectures published in German in 1966. That apparently didn't cause very much of a stir, but a certain amount of sort of public stir occurred a few years later when in 1969 a volume of Alfred's collected letters or selected letters was being prepared, and Yolla had offered the editor of that volume letters from Alfred to her, and the editor rejected them.
Right.
And this caused a certain controversy in the press. Then in 1971, Robert Minder gave even more. He went into greater length in a long essay on an early story of Alfred's called The Sailboat Trip, where he brings together the psychology aspects of the writer and the structure of the story to show how they merge together,
how they marry.
Yeah. And then 1978, of course, was Alfred's centenary year, so there was quite a bit of press interest, and Robert Minder was given quite a lot of space in the Süddeutsche Zeitung to write a long essay.
Yes.
And a journalist called Jürgen Serker also had a long piece in Die Zeit magazine, where he'd also been in touch with Yolla Niclas, and so he was giving some evidence from Yolla's side. But these newspaper articles prompted Doblin's son Klaus, or Claude, who we've mentioned before, who was being very upset by being, as he saw it, abandoned by his parents in France in 1940.
Yeah.
He launched a lawsuit against Robert Minder for something like violation of personal rights of Alfred.
Right.
And this case came to court in Berlin, and Minder had to hire some quite expensive lawyers to counter it. And there was a sort of preliminary session. But before the whole case could be concluded with a decision, with a judgment, Minder actually had a heart attack and died.
Oh, gosh.
And so that put an end to the case.
Yeah. So I imagine the stress of being taken to court was a leading factor in a heart attack.
Yes. Now I have to say, I mean, Minder comes across as being a sort of fairly aggressive defender of Alfred, if you like, a bit of a bulldog.
Right.
But anyway, going on from there, then things sort of cooled a bit. There wasn't much, the Doblin
I
scholarship.
imagine. Can I just say, I imagine at the time, Chris, when the court case was being publicised and things like that, I imagine that sales of Doblin increased because we know that any publicity is often good publicity, even if it's bad publicity.
No, I mean, I really haven't tracked the sales numbers. I mean, he was coming out in dribs and drabs in different editions all through the late sort of 20th century. So it'd be quite tricky trying to pursue how many were actually being sold at what particular time. Yeah. Anyway, interesting question. Yeah. So Doblin scholarship very carefully avoided discussion of this secret until one of the leading German Doblin scholars, called Gabriele Sander, produced a very quite a 400-page book looking at Doblin's life and each of his works. where she says, well, it's possible that Minder exaggerated a little bit about the meaning of this relationship, but in any case, the relationship unleashed new creative powers, which was, a very gracious kind of, recognition from the scholarly world.
And Yolla, of course, was still alive at this point?
No, Yolla had died in, I think, 1978.
Oh, sorry.
So, yeah.
A long time.
Yes. But now, before Yolla died, she wrote, or she typed up, a memoir of her relationship with Doblin, and put very pretty marbled end papers on it, and enclosed it in a metal box. A lot of very tender sort of kind of feeling going into this item. She sent one copy off to the Marbach archive, which was collecting all the materials on Doblin that they could. It's a very large archive now, a very useful archive.
In Germany?
In Germany, in Marbach. So she sent one copy off to that, and she kept one copy for herself. And I think it's fairly evident that she sent a third copy to Robert Minder. I actually acquired her original copy from her great-nephew, because in 2017, a German historian of photography called Eckhard Kohn had produced a very nice album called Yolla Niclas and Alfred Doblin, where he gave the entire German text of her memoir, plus some very long sort of follow-ups of her life in America in the 40s and 50s and 60s, where she became a very well-known and well-liked photographer. And the scholarly shenanigans that were going on by people who wanted to keep the whole thing under wraps and not reveal the secret.
So was Yolla based in America for her entirety, or was she back and forth
from 1940? I mean, she arrived in America in 1940, the same time as the
and did
the
she
Doblins.
go
And
back?
She stayed there. No, she stayed in America.
She stayed in America.
Yes.
Okay.
But the copy that she sent to the archive was embargoed by her until 2005.
Right.
So when it became publicly available, it seems nobody was interested, or nobody knew about it, or it didn't make any stir at all.
Yeah.
And I say it was 12 years after that before Eckhard Kohn published his very nice volume, which was giving the entire text.
Do we know why
to the
she
public.
embargoed it until 2005? What was the reason for doing that?
It's very, very unclear. I think she probably didn't want to stir things up with the family too much, so leave a decent interval when it would only be the grandchildren around, and they're not going to be perhaps so bothered by it. Perhaps I'm really not sure, but perhaps she just wanted it was still their tender secret, and she didn't want it to be kind of violated by too much.
But I think that we can be sensitive, can't we? And we can also say, we in anything like this can entirely rock a family to its core. But obviously, since it is out in the public and is general knowledge now.
Well, yeah, Katie, no, I agree, and I think the discussion I had with the grandson did make me more sensitive to needing to look around to see where is there any trace of Erna's voice in this situation.
Yes,
and I have actually found a few places where it's possible to hear her in her own voice, because remember in previous episodes we found that she's treated quite spitefully and disdainfully by Alfred's clever literary friends.
Yes.
But
and that's really sad, I think. So
yeah.
It's important that she is recognised in this as well.
Yeah. So perhaps at this point, it might be useful if I read out a letter which first appeared in Jürgen Serker's article in Zeit magazine in 1978. even though it had not been published yet. Apparently, it was included in the second volume of the letters.
Okay, and who's written this letter?
This letter is from Alfred to Erna.
Okay.
Right. I have to say, I would love to acquire the second volume of the letters, but it's on offer on Ep6 at €200. So,
Okay.
yeah. Anyway, here it is. And apparently in this second volume of the letters, it's actually dated as having been sent sometime in 1924, which was a couple of years after he first met Yolla. So Alfred writes to Erna, "Once when I went away from home, when I came to know Yolla, those days were so horrible and unbearable for me that I never slept a wink. I was so tormented. When I was back at home, the very first night I slept soundly. You were there. I was at home. A verdict was pronounced over the whole affair. You were and are for me a piece of myself. Sometimes, too often, we have quarrelled. What is that against the, quote, simple, unquote, affection that I feel for you? Love, togetherness, your belonging with me."
Oh.
Which I think is rather lovely.
That's lovely, but also there's a big guilty voice in there,
yes.
I would say.
Yeah, no, I mean, because
So
he was tormented. He says he was tormented.
I mean, he says he was tormented, which I'm sure at points he was, but you make a decision and you run with it. But those words are to appease and to brush off and to try to, in my mind at least, those words are very much for Erna to not worry and to say that he loves her. But
no, because I think if it was just sort of a shallow little, try and keep the lid on it, try and keep her happy or something, he would not have used the words that he did, where he's saying how internally he was very, very torn, but he realizes the family is very important to him because you remember his childhood.
I mean, he was a writer, so
no, but he was also a child whose father abandoned the family.
Yes, and he was, and we do see that, don't we? He's keenly aware that he doesn't want to break the family up.
Yes, but on the other hand, as a writer, the relationship with Yolla was a kind of liberating influence because it enabled him for the first time to create very credible and life-affirming female characters.
I wonder if this is a good point to talk about, to go back to the beginning. So where did it all start?
Where did it all start?
And how did the three of them become entwined?
Yeah. Well, I mean,
when we say the three, so Erna, Alfred, and Yolla.
Yes. So, well, I mean, if you remember from previous episodes, I mean, the marriage of Alfred and Erna was a little bit fraught right from the start because Alfred felt he'd been pushed into it by the family.
Yes.
Because here's a splendid young lady, very clever. She was one of the first medical students, female medical students.
So it was an arranged marriage.
It was sort of an arranged marriage. And he'd had to split up with the young nurse that he'd been living with for the previous 4 or 5 years, and which had produced an illegitimate son.
Right.
So, all through I think the first decade of their marriage, Alfred was probably pretty, cool and aloof, and his heart was not very much in it. But then at a Lenten ball in 1922. I'm sure it was 1922, even though quite often it's referred to as 1921, which I think doesn't agree with external circumstances very well. At 1922, at a Lenten ball, well, Alfred and Erna had been there. There were lots of writers and film folk and artists and so on. A film star called Alexander Granach had pulled across by the hand this young lady to say, "Oh, come and meet Alfred Doblin." Now, Erna, by this point, apparently they'd had a little tiff, and Erna had sort of stormed off to go home for a good night's sleep, whereas Alfred stayed around at the ball. And then this young lady was introduced to him, and she sort of sat down. They began chatting. So next morning, they agreed to go for a walk in the Tiergarten, which is a kind of Hyde Park of Berlin. And they obviously had hit it off very immediately, and I'm pretty sure, things turned romantic very early on. And at this point, Alfred was just beginning to get to work on Mountains, Oceans, Giants, which was a very ambitious project, not anchored in anything historical where he could go and research in museums and books and so on. All had to come from this imaginative spirit working away in him. And he actually rented a room far in the western suburbs of Berlin for several weeks to be able to concentrate fully on developing the story of Mountains, Oceans, Giants.
And this at this stage, Erna was quite used to him going off for periods of time.
Not really, I don't think. He hadn't really. Well, during the First World War, when he'd been suffering from stomach complaints and line of management problems, shall we say. He had gone off to Heidelberg and Strasbourg at times, where he was able to delve into university libraries and so on for Wallenstein. But I wouldn't say that he'd frequently sort of taken leave from the family. Until this point.
Until Mountains, Oceans, Giants.
Yeah. So fairly soon. They agreed that Yolla needed to be introduced to the family. So she was a great favorite with the children. Because she was a photographer, she was able to take some delightful pictures of the family and of the children. She was invited for Christmases, although they weren't, an openly religious family. They celebrated the kind of Christmas that we celebrate, without necessarily too much religion.
Chris, can I just stop you for a second? You said that you were fairly sure that it would have become amorous quite quickly. But would they have made that decision to invite her to all of those things if it was so amorous at that stage?
Well, let's look at some of the evidence we have of things that actually happened with Yolla in the family.
Okay.
In 1924, which was just a couple of years after they met, Erna asked Yolla to come and be the babysitter while Alfred, for an extended period, while Alfred was away in Poland doing research for his travel book called Travels in Poland, which was published the following year.
And so how had Erna met Yolla already?
Well, no, because she'd been introduced to the family as I think she was presented probably first of all as a kind of an interest in what we would call a groupie now, a younger person infatuated with the famous older person.
Okay.
But Erna had to go off and have some medical treatment for something which she wanted to keep secret from Alfred. And she asked Yolla to come along for an extended period of babysitting what were then the three boys. And Yolla was happy to oblige.
Do we know what that medical treatment was?
No idea. Then in 1925, Erna actually invited Yolla to come along on a canal barge holiday that they were going to have in the kind of the wetlands somewhere around Berlin.
Right.
And there again, she was a big favourite with the children. And had an interesting time with them, but then in her memoirs she says, "Oh, they all went off to sleep in their quarters, and I had to go and sleep alone." Her tender heart was a bit hurt by this. And then in 1927, when Yolla was
kind
visiting,
of odd thing to write down.
What?
It's kind of odd.
What was an odd thing to write down?
To say, well, I guess they're just they're her personal memoirs.
It's her personal
memoirs.
It's like
a personal diary.
And it's personal diary, and it is very much a kind of, the tender, girlish, emotional...
yeah, okay. So I will reframe it in my mind.
Yes, yeah. Okay. Then 1927, which was already 5 years after the liaison began, while Yolla was visiting the family, Erna came and sat down beside her and sort of whispered in her ear that she had a big secret, and that there was going to be another little man, or possibly a little woman. In other words, she was pregnant.
Yeah.
With Stefan, as it turned out. And this, in her memoir, Yolla says, this really upset her because it meant that Erna was tightening her chain on Alfred. And she was still hoping, even I think during the 1930s, she was still hoping that, at some point Alfred would opt to leave the family and come and marry her. But finally, by 1940, she'd realized that this was never going to happen. And so Yolla marries a young man called Rudolf Sachs, who had been helping her in her photographic studio in Paris. And,
I imagine it's quite clear to see, well, I think at least anyway, that Erna, by that remark and by telling her in that way, that she knew what was happening, and she was telling her to say, it's time to back off now.
May well be. So Paris, right? The Doblins have settled in one arrondissement, and Yolla is on the other side of town with her little photographic studio. And quite often they bump into each other in the street,
right?
With no predetermined meeting. And this, they both of them put down to a kind of telepathy. Anyway, by the end of the 30s, as war is coming, Yolla's boyfriend, Rudolf Sachs, is interned as an enemy alien. And Yolla realizes, well, actually, she had better sort of go and marry him now, because it's obviously nothing is ever going to happen with Alfred. And so she asks the commandant of the camp where Rudolf is being held if he might be allowed out for an afternoon to get married to her. And the commandant says, oh, yes, of course, why not have 48 hours? So he's released for 48 hours and they get married. But while this was going on, Yolla's mother-in-law, Rudolf's mother, finds this big sort of package of all the stuff that Yolla's been collecting, of letters from Alfred and books with dedications written by him and mementos and so on, and burns it all because this might cause problems with the very nervous French police at this time of the phony war, 1939, 1940.
Okay, yeah.
So all these mementos have disappeared. And then Yolla herself is picked up and taken away to an internment camp right down in the south in the Pyrenees.
Goodness.
But eventually she manages to sort of get away from there and eventually gets to Lisbon and eventually takes a steamer across to New York, where, while Alfred is in Los Angeles, any letters that Yolla sends are immediately intercepted by Erna and marked not known at this address and put back to the post office. And only once, I think, during those years in Los Angeles, did a telephone call that Yolla made to Alfred actually get through at a time when Erna wasn't in the house. But Alfred was very, very sort of frightened by this. He said, "You really must stop telephoning. It just causes big upsets in the family. But on the other hand, it's very nice to hear your voice." Right?
It is tricky. So Erna was obviously trying to protect her family.
Well, she was a wronged woman, asserting her wifeliness against this interloper.
Exactly.
You could say. Anyway, I thought as our reading, we could give Yolla's own testimony, her own words in her own memoir, about the last face-to-face meeting with Alfred.
Okay.
Which took place on the 8th of October 1945, which was the day before the steamer sailed, on which they booked passage back to Europe, where they'd taken this big gamble. They'd no idea what's awaiting them in Europe.
Yeah.
But
So end of the war, they're returning home.
it's the end of the war, right? And Alfred, well, let me just give it in Yolla's words, right? On 8th of October, around noon, Rudy and I were living in a really small apartment in Jackson Heights. And the telephone rang. An agitated voice said, "Little sister, is that you? My little Yolla, I really must see you, and right away. We're in New York for a very short while, and Erna has gone off shopping on Fifth Avenue." "Oh, little brother, I can't walk at all, not one step," I said. "I've just had major knee surgery." "Oh, that's terrible," he said. "Oh, tell you what, I'll come right away to see you. Peter knows your address. He'll help me find you." So he arrived, and we sat facing each other, and I heard the beloved voice. "Oh, our unlived life," he said. And the angels again began to sing as at our first encounter, albeit with different voices. I can't remember anything else we talked about. It was good that Peter was there too, so our eyes could speak the most. Dee's full head of hair with the parting at the side was turning grey at the temples. Otherwise there was no essential change in his previous appearance. When we spoke of my lost copy of Mountains, with the page-long personal dedication, and I told him I had at least been able to find another copy here in New York, he stood up to take it down from the bookshelf. "Now no more regrets, little sister. I shall quickly write out something else." A pen was in his hand. "The world is not lost. We have no need to wait for salvation. Dear little sister, today I see you again, and we shall often see one another again. Be sure of it. Early October 1945, New York, your P." P was for Pim, which was her nickname for him, just as Yolla was actually his nickname for her. Her real name was Charlotte.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Then he helped me to my feet, and I hobbled on crutches to open the refrigerator. "Something to drink, little brother." "You know," he said, "maybe it's quite wrong of us to head back to Europe so cheerful, so carefree, with no idea what awaits us there." A few minutes later, he glanced at the clock. "I have to go soon." He turned to Peter. "Can you call for a taxi?" Normally, when I took my heavy cameras and tripods into New York to take pictures, it often took half an hour to locate an empty taxi in this area. Peter, on the other hand, oh woe, he came back hardly 5 minutes later. The cab was waiting at the door. I was quite bewildered when Doblin stood up. "Little Yolla," he said at the very end, "there's one thing I've learned. One should never enter a marriage that is not made in heaven." We embraced with all our heart, all our soul, all our strength for the last time.
So it really does sound like, from what you've just read out, that he did have regrets at that moment in time. He regretted that they couldn't be together.
Yes, he was very much a split spirit, right? He was, the human being and the family man who didn't want to reprise the disaster that his own father had visited on the family when he was only 10 years old.
Yes.
On the other hand, he was the creator, the writer, and this creativity was an incredibly important part of his life. He could never have, all these books behind me there are basically books by Doblin.
Yeah.
There's a very long bookshelf. So yes, he is a split mind, a split personality, you could say. No, it's not a split personality. It's a split state of being. Right? Anyway, the day after, just as they were, rushing to sort of get ready to get onto the boat, he managed to scribble a little note to her, right, dated 9th of October, "Still in New York. My dear little sister, little Yolla, today is Sunday. I'm sitting in the hotel. Everything is not just packed, but almost already fetched away. And tomorrow morning we're off to Europe. At least I have seen my little sister once again, and spoken with her, and found her as good as I always knew her, and maybe she saw in me the old unchanged friend, though a little aged. Little sister, when and where shall I see you again? Ah, what will become of me over there? I'm going into it so cheerful and maybe clueless. Think of me, help me with your thoughts, and if you can, your prayers. It will not be simple or easy over there, and I'm no longer young. We can stay in touch with each other by letter. You will hear from me soon, little Yolla. I've had stupid, disturbed, harassed days here. Not my fault. It's so lucky that I was able to steal that hour with you. How is your knee? You'll soon need massages, but all in all, it'll soon be fine and all right in English. For my work, I found no understanding in America, but there were several friendly and helpful people here, certainly more than I ever found in France. Now live well, really well, and you will never forget me, nor I you, your P.
So undoubtedly, we know, everyone now knows they had a relationship for sure.
Yes.
Of
Oh well, I'm not so sure. I mean, it was still pretty confidential, I think, right up until after he died. Even close friends didn't, fully realize
sorry,
the
Chris,
intensity of the arrangement.
You misunderstand me, as in now, today.
Today.
Yes.
Oh yes. I mean,
Yes.
well, now, yes. I mean, 60 years after
Yes.
Doblin's death, this is now kind of common knowledge.
Yeah.
Because the materials, the witness statements from Robert Minder and from Yolla, and from the Herr Cohn, who put together the very nice volume about the relationship. It's all there. It's part of the Doblin story.
Yeah. So I wonder if we would call her a muse.
I thought
in the early days, and then
yes,
maybe that moved into something else.
I definitely thought that she had the function or the spirit, if you like, of a muse who enabled him to create female characters of a delight and a kind of life-giving fullness that he had never managed before. The two in particular, there's Vernaska in the later books of Mountains, Oceans, Giants, and Savitri in Manas. I don't think he would have been capable of creating these if he hadn't had this kind of release of, the erotic, perhaps, if you like, in his life. But it's interesting. Even last year, when I asked a leading UK academic in the Doblin area, are there any published articles or anything about Yolla as Doblin's muse? And he just wrote back very curtly saying, "I've seen no evidence that she was ever his muse."
Well, I guess there's fear there, isn't there? It's from an establishment. There's fear of putting something in writing. So I feel like we've covered quite a bit, and I also feel that we've talked about Erna and her feelings towards the relationship. We've heard from Yolla, and obviously we've heard through Minder, we've heard from Doblin as well.
Yes.
So would we say that this is the end of this episode?
I think there's not much more to say, for this episode. I mean, I hope the viewers and listeners will have found it interesting enough to go and explore, particularly these two wonderful rounded female characters, Vernaska in Mountains, Oceans, Giants, and Savitri in Manas. Because I have to say, Manas is continuing to be very severely neglected among all of Doblin's works, even though it's got splendid free verse. I mean, free verse usually scares everybody off. But it's a very particular kind of Doblin kind of free verse, which is actually very easy to read, despite being sort of intensified prose. So I would urge people, not to be put off. Go and acquire a copy of Manas, and
So maybe
immerse yourself in it.
Manas first, Mountains, Oceans, Giants afterwards.
Yes, Mountains, Oceans, Giants is quite a hard go. I mean, I was tempted in my translation of Mountains, Oceans, Giants to say, let's put episode or book 6 to 9. Let's put them first.
When it gets a bit more exciting.
Yeah, because they're the real science fiction-y exciting bits, and then we'll do all the lead up to it.
You've got to have the world building
later on.
You've got to have the world building.
Yeah.
Okie dokie. Thank you, Chris. It's been really interesting, and I'm glad that we've covered it in the way that we have.
Well, I hope we've done it in an inoffensive way, where we're trying to be honest about something which is already in the public domain, and something which I think is of interest to anybody who is interested in reading Doblin.
Okie dokie. Well, let's stop there then and say thank you very much, everybody. Thank you for joining us today, and we will see you next time.
Okay, well, thank you, Katie. So, bye-bye, everybody. I'm not quite sure what our next episode is going to be.
I don't know. Well, maybe we're on a summer break now.
Yes. Yeah.
We can wait till the autumn.
Yeah, and I hope all the various interruptions we had because of internet connections will not cause you, as producer, too much trouble.
I'm sure I'll snip some bits out. It'll be fine.
Yeah.
Thanks,
okay,
everyone.
Well, bye, everybody. Thank you. Bye. We hope you've enjoyed this episode of the Epic Worlds of Alfred Doblin. Join us next time to explore more about this fascinating writer's life and works. Meanwhile, visit the website beyond-alexanderplatz.com for posts about Doblin and some of his unjustly neglected contemporaries, as well as downloads of translations. So until next time, happy reading!